Tom Bauer just exposed Meghan Markle's obsession with Princess Diana, and what looks like admiration on the surface suddenly starts looking far more intense when the details are placed side by side, because this is not being presented as one innocent photograph, one accidental outfit, or one harmless coincidence. It is being painted as a pattern that allegedly stretches across years, relationships, appearances, clothing, behavior, charity trips, and even the smallest personal details. And the disturbing question hanging over everything is brutally simple. How far can admiration go before it stops looking like inspiration and starts looking like an attempt to recreate somebody else's identity? According to the claims being discussed, this fascination supposedly began long before royal life became reality, with Diana wallpaper allegedly filling a room and the dream of becoming the next Diana apparently taking root long before anyone realized just how important that comparison might eventually become.
I mean, is it an act? Does she really think that she's in touch with Diana beyond the grave? It's absolutely astonishing. In absolute seriousness, he really does believe that Meghan is talking to Diana, his mother.
Markle just celebrated her birthday, and once again, the comparisons exploded after a swimming photograph triggered immediate attention because the pose appeared strikingly familiar. Meghan and Diana suddenly appeared side by side, and what might normally have been dismissed as a random similarity became another piece in an already growing puzzle. The allegation is that Meghan Markle's fascination was never casual at all, because being like Diana had supposedly become an ultimate ambition, something quietly carried forward until entering the royal world transformed that fascination into something far more visible. And that is exactly why every new similarity now attracts scrutiny. One photograph? Perhaps coincidence. But when people believe they are watching the same imagery appear repeatedly, suspicion grows, and suddenly even silence around those comparisons starts creating more questions.
Wherever she is, whether it's at Costner or in Colombia or in Nigeria or wherever, she's always, her publicist will reveal that she's wearing one of Diana's jewels.
Then came the Rwanda trip in 2016, and this is where the story becomes even more provocative. Meghan traveled there under a charitable purpose, but according to the criticism presented, something else seemed unusually important: clothing and a personal photographer. Instead of the journey being remembered purely for charity, attention shifted toward the photographs being produced there, and critics began asking why image making appeared to occupy such an important place during supposedly humanitarian work. Was this simply normal documentation, or was something much more calculated happening behind those carefully captured moments? Because when the camera becomes almost as important as the cause, every photograph begins looking less spontaneous and more deliberate.
In Meghan's mind, she is Diana.
Yes.
I mean, Diana Spencer is Meghan Spencer. And that was all part of her imagination, that somehow she could inherit the glow of her dead mother-in-law.
That Rwanda episode is presented as an early sign of the Princess Diana fixation because charity, photography, humanitarian imagery, and carefully constructed public symbolism suddenly seemed to overlap. Meghan appeared focused heavily on pictures, and once that detail became connected to everything that followed, the trip stopped looking isolated. It became clue number one in a much larger theory.
She had gone over there on a charity trip to help bring or build clean water resources for this area. I believe it was in Rwanda. And so this picture is out of place because she was meant to be working while there to make this happen. And she brought along extra suitcases of wardrobe and her own personal photographer.
And then the Perfume allegation changed everything. When Meghan started dating Harry, she allegedly wanted private information about Princess Diana's perfume. Harry, deeply emotionally connected to his mother, reportedly revealed the name, and during those early dates, Meghan allegedly began wearing that fragrance. Think about the emotional weight of that detail. A scent can trigger memory faster than almost anything else, and the claim being presented is that wearing it was not random. It supposedly deepened an emotional association already buried inside the relationship. Meghan allegedly understood exactly what Diana represented emotionally, while Prince Harry carried memories that could never simply disappear. If true, this was not copying something visible like clothing. This was entering the territory of memory, emotion, and association.
And according to reports, and from them themselves, Meghan was wearing Princess Diana's favorite perfume for her dates with Harry in the beginning. So Meghan already, upon meeting Harry, has planted images and scents to remind him of his mother, even in a subconscious way, like kind of sneakily, which is weird.
But even that supposedly was not the end. The allegations moved from Perfume into Mannerisms. Meghan was accused of adopting Diana's downward glance, certain facial expressions, and a softer, more reserved public style. The change appeared especially noticeable because Meghan had previously been regarded as naturally expressive and talkative. Suddenly, critics noticed covered mouth laughter, altered expressions, quieter gestures, and behavioral similarities that seemed increasingly difficult for them to ignore. To people already watching closely, the transformation looked jarring. The comparisons had become so deeply attached to the public narrative that every movement could now become another clue. And then came the outfits. Meghan began appearing in looks critics compared directly with Diana's style, followed by poses and photographic settings that appeared eerily familiar. A gala outfit sparked comparisons. Poses sparked comparisons. Photographs sparked comparisons. Then the swimming pool birthday image arrived, and suddenly the entire controversy erupted again because Diana had been photographed in a remarkably similar moment. One similarity could be dismissed. Two could be questioned. But once people believe they are seeing the same visual language repeated again and again, coincidence becomes harder for critics to accept. The unsettling accusation is no longer simply that Meghan admired Diana. It is that somewhere along the way, critics believe the line between admiration and imitation became dangerously blurred, and what comes next makes that question even harder to ignore. Then came the Australian tour in 2018, immediately after their wedding. And this is where the story takes an even stranger turn, because the enormous crowds and public excitement were apparently interpreted as something much deeper than ordinary royal popularity. According to Bauer, Harry and Meghan believed the extraordinary reception was connected to Diana's magic, almost as though Diana was somehow looking down on them and blessing what was happening. But that interpretation raises a huge question. Was the cheering really proof that history was repeating itself, or were people simply responding to two working royals representing an institution carrying generations of tradition? The criticism is brutal because Diana spent years creating a unique relationship with the public, and nobody could simply walk through the palace doors and instantly inherit everything Diana represented. Yet after Australia, something apparently shifted. Harry supposedly saw echoes of his mother everywhere, while Meghan became increasingly connected to that comparison, and suddenly what had started with photographs, perfume, mannerisms, and outfits was now tied to something far more emotionally explosive: the fear that Diana's tragic history might somehow repeat itself. That fear appears repeatedly in Harry's public narrative, with Meghan being viewed through the lens of Diana's life, treatment, and death. Harry himself has repeatedly drawn comparisons between the two women, especially when discussing negative press and the possibility of history repeating itself. Then, Harry's memoir Spare pushed the Diana connection into even more extraordinary territory. The book contains numerous references to Diana, and the source describes Harry as believing his mother remained spiritually present around him. Harry even described encountering a woman who claimed to communicate with spirits, with the experience apparently strengthening his belief that Diana remained involved in his life. But then came another allegation that sent the entire story into completely different territory. Meghan, already associated with yoga and meditation, was rumored by unnamed sources to have told Harry that she experienced a spiritual connection with Diana during a session. That claim remains an allegation, but within this narrative, it transformed the supposed fixation from visual imitation into something intensely personal and spiritual. And then the claims became even more startling. A story circulated alleging that Harry told a friend Meghan was somehow in touch with Diana and that Diana supported what they were doing. After that came allegations surrounding Diana's resting place. Meghan was claimed to have visited the grave, placed her hands on the gravestone, asked Diana for guidance, and even laid on the grave at one point. If accurate, critics would inevitably ask whether admiration had crossed into something dramatically more intense, but these remain claims presented in the source rather than independently established facts. Still, inside this unfolding narrative, every previous detail suddenly reconnects. The photographs, the perfume, the gestures, the outfits, the spiritual claims, and now the graveside story. Each piece becomes part of the same disturbing question: where exactly does inspiration end and obsession begin? Finally, Meghan and Harry traveled to Nigeria in 2024, and once again, Diana's legacy entered the conversation because Princess Diana had previously traveled there too. The source portrays the journey as another supposed connection between Meghan and places associated with Diana, arguing that the repeated parallels parallels have damaged Meghan's credibility rather than strengthening it. And that is where this mystery refuses to disappear. Is Meghan Markle simply being compared unfairly with one of the most photographed women in royal history, or has the pattern become too specific for critics to dismiss? Whatever the answer, every new similarity guarantees that people will keep looking backward, comparing photographs, studying gestures, questioning coincidences, and wondering whether this story has actually reached its ending or whether another Diana comparison is waiting just around the corner.